And throughout all that time, we'd often talk about and dream up the space game. What if we could take that feeling of being who you want to be and exploring a new world, but set it in space, where you weren't really limited in where you could go or what you could do?
What are you doing? Help! What are you doing? Someone help! 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 Someone help! What are you doing? Someone help! 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 Someone help! So what are you doing?
Can you believe this? It's been a year since Starfield released. I sure as hell forgot. So, what has changed and what did Bethesda do? Or did Bethesda even do any Jesus. Okay, well, the mechanics ain't the worst. Come on!
I don't know if she lost.
Okay. Any slower flow? Okay, here we go. Yep. Oh, no. Well done. Yeah, I guess it's as good a time as any to beat a dead horse. So, come with me and let's take a quick look at, well, basically what happened with and what became of Starfield and Bethesda's hubris. Alright, I suppose we should start at the very beginning, the launch period. So, before the game launched, the game was viewed as a No Man's Sky-esque, and as it came out, it pretty much basically ended up being as. However, the difference was that, well, No Man's Sky was fun. There was a lot more to do in it, and there was actual freedom to go wherever you want and do whatever you wanted. However, Starfield did not. And that's where kinda we get into the general reception of the game. So, a lot of people essentially commented that it was boring, and it was, fundamentally. Problem was that longer you delved into it, or the deeper you go into its critiques and examination, the worse it kinda got. But we'll get into that. Generally, everyone viewed it as a boring game. And that's where we continue on from then on. Alright, so the game releases, and within the first days or so, we get our first reviews from the media outlets out there that got the pre-release access and more. And a few of them afterwards. Even so, the Acolytes trailer that showcases all the 10 out of 10s, you know, companies do all those. Well, those reviews, well, I did read them, and there's a pattern within them. However, we'll get into that. Skip to the Steam reviews, and you see a little bit of a different picture immediately. 40, 50, 60% positive at most. That's what Starfield still to this day stands on Steam. It kind of flies in the faces of all the 10 out of 10s. There's a lot more interesting story to be told on Steam charts, so let's take a look. Starfield then is enjoying about 7,000 players concurrently on average, and that's actually not too bad. However, let me put it in perspective. See, within about first 2 months, the player numbers from the peak launch numbers dropped to 10% of them, meaning about 30,000. Within the first 6 months, it dropped down to about 5%. And in the next 6 months, the rest of the year, it dropped to about 1 to 2% of its peak concurrent numbers. But even so, you might think that, well, that's not too bad, I suppose. But let me put it in even further perspective. Baldur's Gate 3, and this game released relatively close to Starfield and is revered even today as a truly wonderful game. I would call it even great. Now, how is that faring? Well, about 800,000 players on all-time peak, which is really good and quite a lot larger than Starfield's, but that's beside the point. What's the current player number active on average? It is about 10% of that all-time peak, and you'll see about the same number for a lot of games that are revered well as great or even good games or fun ones. Now that is 12 months after the release. In fact, you can find the sort of same numbers for Fallout 4 a year after its release. It still had 10% of the active player base. If we take a quick look here. Yeah, sure, today its numbers are quite a bit lower, but it is what it is. Point being that about 10% 12 months later, you know, is expected for a even great game. Okay, Or what about Fallout 76? Even that in raw numbers right now is doing better than Starfield. Yes, even though it has a quite a lot lower all-time peak, it actually is quite a lot healthier than Starfield is. Point being that a good game, generally speaking, is gonna retain about 10% of its all-time peak about 12 months later, and that's more or less the expected sort of metric, if you will. What was so wrong about it? Well, I did a whole 3-hour hypercritical review of it. I did literally look into everything possibly I could in the shortest possible way. So, go check it out. However, if you don't exactly have the time for it, or, well, you want the summary version, well, let me indulge you. On the surface, everyone said that Starfield was just simply boring, and it really is. However, the reason why it was boring, well, that's harder to sort of extrapolate in one specific way. But there was more of a story. Still, credit where credit is due, and FPS mechanics actually were, well, modern. They were not offensive like Fallout 3 or Fallout 4. For the very first time, Bethesda made an okay shooter for the most part. That was something to remark on, but it was still an okay stuff. Stuff that normal games managed to master about 20 years ago. But hey, positive is a positive, right? However, with the exception of maybe audio stuff, that was about all you would get for positive. A lot of people immediately complained that unlike Fallout 4 or Skyrim, the open world of Starfield felt really empty. There was a lot of procedurally generated stuff, and every time you would land on a planet, yeah, there were a couple of points of interest, but all of them were basically the same. And sometimes not even there, just simply open field with nothing in it. And don't you even start with the whole, it's a space, it's supposed to be empty. No, how about fuck you? You know what we mean. And then there was the roleplay system. Okay, I'm not gonna bore you with the statistics. You can go check out my hypercritical, and basically a lot of skills were broken or didn't work or were pointless. Lovely. On top of that, there was New Game Plus. Generally speaking, the game pushed you with the skill system to go and grind the story again and again and again and again. Same thing over and over again. On the other hand, then there's the roleplay part of the RPG gameplay. Honestly, there's no other way I can explain it other than you can't kill children! But seriously though, you couldn't kill any single NPC with a unique name. Unless of course the game allowed you to in 1 or 2 moments. Now that solves maybe one problem while creating a lot of other ones. Most namely, player agency. Yeah, go be who you want and do what you want, right Todd? Yeah, except when you don't, when the game doesn't allow you to murder anyone. Or, for example, kill the bad guy that you know is bad beforehand. Or by accident making a bad choice. Your choices have no fucking weight. It's lovely, isn't it, Todd? Yeah, you're making a roleplay game where you can be who you want, do what you want, except you don't. And then you literally have Baldur's Gate where you can actually do all these things and came about a month before. It just puts it to utter shame. Oh god, and then there was the writing, Jesus. Now, my competency in writing is very limited, I can barely string a sentence together as you can tell, but even I could tell. The text for voice actors had to read was just deluge, a verbal diarrhea that was not condensed. And the big difference you could tell immediately after playing Cyberpunk, for example, or Baldur's Gate. Their text, every single sentence had a purpose and meaning and would tell you something. Starfield would just keep on yammering on and 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 on. And then, the final bit of critique I had for Starfield was about the sanitization of the whole game. Well, sure, yeah, you couldn't kill children, and of course there wouldn't be any gibbing, but there was also a problem that there was no thought-provoking message or any kind of tone, idea, philosophy, any kind of thing that would make the story interesting. And it seemed like the game kept on riding the fence like it's some sort of a massive dildo. And that's what created Starfield as a really boring game. It had nothing to say. But okay, it's been a year since then, so what the hell did Starfield even do and accomplish? Did it add anything? As a matter of fact, yes, they actually did. So, let me list off all the things, more or less, what they did. So then, first off, we have difficulty options where you can change multiple things about the game. For example, the damage you deal or the damage that is being dealt to you. And depending on the setting itself, you get either more or less XP. And that's not a bad idea. Generally speaking, like No Man's Sky, you have about the same idea. However, one setting did piss me off, and that was the vendor available cash. Again, on stream, I went into the detail as to how it's insulting, and the point is, don't make infinite inventory space. Inventory space should be limited, and that creates a rather interesting gameplay, rather than the vendor cache. Moving on. Then we have the drivable thing that recently just released, the buggy, and honestly speaking, all things considered, it's not offensive. It allows you to traverse the environment faster, with the exception of the fact that now you can reach the edge of the map a lot sooner. And that's kind of a problem with Starfield. That has not changed. At least it's easy to control. At least it's easy to control. Ah, there we go. That's the invisible wall. Wow, yeah. And now, thanks to the car, you can reach the edge, edge a lot faster and enjoy the quality. Oh God, can you stop? Can you stop? I'm literally at the edge. Yes, but cannot go this way. Yeah, I don't fucking care. And speaking of the map, they finally added the mini-map. Yes, the minimap is finally there, a thing that should have been there from the very start. In fact, a lot of the things that they added in this year should have been part of the game already on the launch, as standard. Even if it further breaks the illusion of infinite space, because again, the maps are limited boxes with invisible walls at them. Lovely. Then there's also finally the DLSS and FSR upscaling methods to improve the frame rate that is already still trash. Spoiler alert, it still runs like ass. Then the next thing we have is, oh look at that, a quality of life improvement of ability to disable the conversation camera. So no longer with this enabled, the game will rip out your face and put it in position or teleport it in a position for a character to speak with you. I can't tell you how much I complained about this and how much I despised it. The fact that Bethesda doesn't know how to make proper fucking scenes is beyond me. How could you make so much money and still not learn the basics of screenwriting? Oh, and the final thing is they added this button for creations. What is creations? I don't know, but yeah, okay, that might have been a mistake again. I want to see creations. I don't know what that is. I haven't played it in half a year. It's the best creation ever. A loading screen. Oh God, kill me. Quality entertainment there, folks. Subscribe, like, and all that good stuff, especially Patreon. Support your fellow resident Latvian creator. There we go. Every time I pressed it, it crashed. But apparently that's the paid mods page. Yay, yeah. Those that don't remember, paid mods are a thing that Bethesda is still trying to push forward. And we should be pushing back because it's a bad thing. But for everyone else, that's basically a microtransaction store. But what about the things that didn't change in this time, that should have been already? Well, let me list them off. Starting with the performance. It's still really bad. Like, the game looks like shit, and it still runs like this. For example, just recently I reviewed the Space Marine 2. It's not optimized, but it at least looks gorgeous and actually runs better than Starfield, as a matter of fact. Then there are bugs. As in typical Bethesda fashion, they managed to introduce a few new ones. Fuck. So it's now more broken than before? What? So they introduced a new thing and oh God, every planet is... Even the star! Jesus Christ, it's now more broken. Wow, Bethesda, ladies and gentlemen. Which leads us to Steam reviews as they are right now. No wonder they haven't changed at all. Yeah, sure, the game is still at around 60% or so at maximum, but yeah, at this point, a lot of games tend to improve a little bit, but the reviews are still mixed, even from the people who are either returning or new players. And they still deem this game to be mediocre at best. And you know, it's kind of also funny, looking at mods, generally speaking, they also have kind of given up on the game, despite the fact that now they have mod tools, which honestly doesn't surprise me. Already within the first 6 months, some major modders gave up on Starfield completely. Not because it was broken or whatnot else, but because it really was just boring. Oh, and there's actually a little bit of information that is at least worth mentioning. So, approximation of the budget for the game, you know, Starfield, was kind of speculated because no public data actually exists for these things, but it was estimated that Starfield took over $200 million to make. Estimations are around 400 million or so, but remember that number. Now, when it comes to game sales, well, just this January on Twitter there were a couple of interesting things floating up, and one of the factoids was Bethesda said last month that Starfield had 13 million players. Mortal Kombat, number 9 on the list, sold 3 million copies as of November. So, safe to conclude that at least 10 million people played Starfield on Game Pass, meaning that 3 million only purchased Starfield. That would mean about 300 million recouped in sales. That's kind of about 100 million less than the estimated budget for Starfield, including all the costs for the advertisement and more. So Starfield lost money and Bethesda fucked up. But as for the source where this comes from, yeah, the account doesn't exist anymore. But take them as more or less rumors, because no real numbers exist for these companies and they only internally know what is what. But it would not surprise me if Starfield really lost money for Bethesda, and deservedly so. Right, it's time to dunk on game journalists, or the pretend journalists, the failed bloggers, if you will. It seems that they're starting to make excuses. So, for example, this article. Let's take a look. Starfield players' rare and beautiful discovery proves you gave up on Starfield too soon. Yes, my friend, you gave up on Starfield too soon. Just give it another go. Modern audiences and all that stuff, right? Welcome to clickbait, folks. Oh, God. Okay, so what is this about? Right, so Starfield have been criticized for lackluster exploration, blah, 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 and the article basically comes down to this. Posted by Reddit user showcased an incredibly rare sighting, a solar eclipse from space. Yeah, that's the whole article. Literally, or describing an image found on Reddit. That is literal clickbait, folks. This is the modern game journalism. Oh, look at that. Those are Screen Rant, our good, dear old friends Screen Rant. But they're not the only ones. Pretty much all the big ones, PC Gamer, PC Games and Verge and so on and so forth, all of them pump out articles like these. Literally just finding a thing on Reddit, most likely, or Twitter, and just posting it, describing it with a few paragraphs. It's time to return to Starfield. Because of that picture, it's time to return to it. But these articles are a dime a dozen. You can find them. This is just an example. As Starfield prepares the launch of Shattered Space DLC, players are slowly returning to the gigantic RPG to pick up where they left off in 2023. Steam Charts has something else to say about it overall. The numbers haven't improved for the last months. So no, this does not coincide with players returning. Sure, there will be a bump once the DLC launches, because at this point, really, you are wasting your time playing Starfield. You are wasting your time and money bothering to keep it up. That's my opinion, and you can like whatever you like. What I'm saying is there are other better spent well, money spent on better games and better spent time on better games. Pure and simple. And speaking of those articles and game journalists, if you will, after doing my hypercritical review, I thought, well, you know, let's take a quick look at those 10 out of 10 reviews. What do they even have to say about the game that's so overly precious about the Starfield? As a matter of fact, here we go. We got Starfield's Acolytes trailer, and, well, dislike ratio could tell you plenty of it, but regardless. I decided to take a look at these individual articles. What do they have to say? Even a couple of ones from Metacritic. All the 10 out of 10s, 9 out of 10s, 5 out of 10s, and so on and so forth. As it happens, well, it was interesting. As I started reading these reviews, one after another, I started noticing a pattern. I made a video literally discussing it all, but, well, to save you some time, essentially what these reviews do is simply list out a couple of things about the game, what you can do in it, quite literally, like, you can jump in this game, you can walk in this game, you can sprint in this game, and you can shoot in this game with a gun 1, 2, 3, and maybe 4. And then maybe mention a couple of things that they did themselves as they are running about the game, doing things, essentially what they did in the game. And through just naming these things, they're implying positivity about it, because, well, why would you mention it? Because, well, it's good, right? But it's not. It's deceptive writing, fundamentally, and it is a fucking industry-wide problem. All of these reviews literally do is just list things, and then put a 10 out of 10. That's not the evaluation. That's a setup for evaluation. And all of these articles did this. It was disgusting to see. The industry is fucking polluted, and these are near clickbait fucking articles. And there you go, that's Starfield after about a year or so. Now, for Americans in the audience who just need a soundbite, is Starfield now better? Well, yes, it certainly is. However, for the rest of you folks out there, well, the answer to that is gonna be a bit more complex. Okay, I'm being rather mean at the end there, because I probably should be using the word, it's less crap. It's still crap though. So here's the thing, the biggest takeaways for Starfield are simple, especially now after about a year. Bethesda, in their hubris, thought that their game design, which already was obsolete in 2008 when it was new, would work now, near 20 years later. In their hubris, they thought that putting more polygons on character faces and food would constitute as good graphics. In their hubris, they thought that making the game barely run 60 FPS would be good enough. In their hubris, they thought that their incompetent amateur writing would be good enough. In their hubris, they thought that RPG meant restrict player gameplay, not roleplay games, where you could play a role. And most of all, in their hubris, they thought that all they had to do was make more of the open world, so that you could...
And it's intentionally made to be played for a long time. It's one of the things we've learned from our previous games, from the Skyrim, from Fallout, that people want to play them for a very long time. So Starfield, I would say, was the most intentional going into it. This is a game people are going to play for a long time. How do we build it such that it is allowing that in a way that feels natural?
And that would make up for all of their incompetencies. Oh, but come on, at least they put in the fucking buggy and a few options, right? And just like Screen Rant says, we just simply gave up on it too soon. So, yeah, hopefully Starfield does send a message to Bethesda, because we all want better games overall. I mean, hell, I would like that Elder Scrolls 6 to be really great, the better Skyrim even. But come to think of it, well, if Fallout 76 didn't send them a message, a proper one, and they didn't change much of their tone, well, there's little hope, but once it comes out, we'll see. But anyways, that's about it on the whole dead horse beating, shall we say. Hopefully you enjoyed it and it was cathartic to yourself, because for me, yeah, needed to get a couple of things out there. Aside from that, well, if you want to support my bad attempts at video making or bad freeform speech, as you can tell, this wasn't exactly the most scripted thing, but, well, I tried, you know, that's why I write scripts. Regardless, check out the Patreon, I'll see you there, and I'll see you then next time, and be kind to each other and try to understand each other. Maybe then we'll come to some sort of understanding. Boom, boom.